So, William, if you want to give us a little background of, how long you've lived here, who you are, and what you want to talk about, and then I'll get to my first question.
Alrighty. I've lived in Jackson since I first moved to Jackson July 2nd of 1978. So I've been here 42 years. And I'm probably, as far as a Black man, I've probably lived in Jackson longer than any other Black man. And I have to say, my experience in Jackson has been truly positive. Have I had racial encounters? Yes, I've had, but it still does not compare to the opportunities that have been offered me here in this valley. I feel like it's an honor to be able to speak to everyone who's listening today, because I think for me, the whole idea of racism, it's a spiritual issue. It's like I think I was talking to Corey, one of the things that I've always believed, and this is one of the statements, one of the teachings of Buddha, he says, the source of all suffering is wrong identity. And what I take from that is that, people believe, for one, people believe that they are their bodies. We're not. People believe that they're their money. They're not their money. They believe that they're their homes, their careers, their accomplishments, even their talents. We're none of those things. And to people really begin to realize who they truly are, nothing will really change greatly. We can do things to mitigate, I feel like mitigate racism and biases, but ultimately the solution is going to come from within each of us. And so with that, Corey, like I say, I'll let you start with that. I'll let you begin.
Yeah, that's awesome. Just so everyone knows, I talked to William on the phone. We talk quite often whenever we see each other, but we had a conversation on the phone for almost 2 hours, and the whole time, I had goosebumps. It was so invigorating. It was so helpful and enlightening just to see a perspective from, an OG who's been here and lived this life for, longer than most of us. It was a great experience, so I'm happy to share it. So my first question for you is, what are your thoughts on our country today?
I think what's happening right now, our country is in a serious flux. As a country, the way I look at it, this country has lived a lie from its beginning. I will say that this country was founded on the premise, a perfect premise, that was put forward by Jefferson, that we're a nation that believes that all men are created equal. And people have tried to make, I would just say, gods of Jefferson, Washington. They were men, and they were men who had high ideals, but they could not execute perfectly. Jefferson, in his writings, knew that he was a hypocrite. He knew that the fact that this country could not embrace all men as equal, he knew that there would be extreme negative consequences to our nation. But he still could not give up his life of privilege, because, slaves at that time really meant money. People who owned slaves were usually always wealthy. They were wealthy because of the labor of their slave people they had enslaved. And that is the legacy, again, that we're dealing with in this country now. The trauma and the damage that was done to Blacks is still felt. Even though, yes, there's been many Blacks who have been able to be successful and break free, but the scars of slavery and also Jim Crow and the laws that were passed that damaged the Black community are still felt till this day. And just like, and I go back to people talk about, how do we solve this problem? Well, one of the problems is that racism it was not a grassroots or organic thing that just sprung up. Racism was something that was created. It was created by men who wanted power and control. And the thing I think people don't understand that whenever you encounter a politician, a ruler, a leader, and his premise is always to talk about dividing people, telling you how terrible certain groups of people are, this person is actually looking for power that he really is not deserving of. Divide and conquer tactics is something that has always been employed by people who are looking for control and power that they really don't deserve. It was, I can keep going on this for a while, but it was something that the British were masters of. That was one reason why the British were able to control such a huge part of the world. They were master of divide and conquer. They knew how to go into a place and take animosities that existed between native groups and use it against them. It was that using that same type of techniques. It's what they did here in the Americas. At the very beginning, going back to the 1619s, Jefferson, not Jefferson, I'm talking about, but the British, there was a revolt called the Bacon Revolt. And this is where poor whites, Blacks, indentured servant slaves, they all united against the British landowners. And they were able to carry on this revolt for almost a year and a half until the British army was brought in and put it down. Well, in order to keep that from happening, the leaders of Great Britain at the time came up with the idea of creating this division between Blacks and white. And that was really the beginning of the whole idea of creating, putting forth the idea that whites were superior. Because what happened, it used to be that when there was a Black indentured servant and a white indentured servant, and they were given their freedoms, they were usually given money, gun, horse, and sometimes land. Well, after that revolt was put down, they decided they were going to start creating a sense of separation between the Blacks and whites. So when a Black person was freed, he was not given, he was given, say, a gun, but he was not given a horse or money. And then the restriction became even more to the point where he was not given anything, and the white person was given, far more. And the reason they would give is that because you're white and you're better than that Black person. And it was from there that this whole premise of white superiority and somehow whites were better than Blacks started. And it started by the British, and then it was carried even further, after the American Revolution. And so that we're looking at those consequences now. I see, when I look at ghettos, I sometimes feel like people seem to think Black people somehow gravitated to these ghettos of their own free will and stayed there of their own free will, but it was not true. You know, laws were passed that made sure that Blacks stayed in one particular location. And like I said, I know our time is limited, so I don't want to get too detailed. But what eventually happens is government comes in, reinforces certain beliefs, reinforces certain practices, and the consequences have been what you see now. I mean, you see ghettos that, and be honest, before I came to Jackson, I could walk through ghettos, LA, Detroit, no problem. But the one ghetto that shook me to my core was Chicago. I remember standing on the outskirts of the Chicago ghetto, and I could not go into it. Because in my heart, and I don't know, it was just like a premonition or whatever, I saw death. I didn't know at that time, I had no idea about what was going to happen in Chicago, but when I saw that ghetto, I knew the people who lived there, the kids who grew up there, when I hear about the endless murders that seem to take place in Chicago now, it does not surprise me, because that place could turn anyone into a murderer. When I look at that, when I saw that ghetto, it's a place that to this day, I don't even understand why Barack Obama, when he was president, that he did not make that one of his pet project to go in and see what he could do to end that, to end, the depravity that I saw and felt when I stood on the edge of that ghetto in Chicago. It was like something, it was like looking at World War II photos where you see these bombed out buildings, trees without leaves, because this was in late spring, so the trees that were there had not started blooming, had not put out their leaves, but this is what I saw. And that's the impression, even to this day, of that ghetto that I stood on the edge of. And so I feel like America, for individual Blacks, we've done well, but as a race of people as a whole, we still have a long ways to go in this country.
Awesome. Yeah. I can't even imagine. I mean, I haven't traveled that way, but I do have quite a few friends who are from different ghettos and different communities where there isn't much growth. And the one thing that they all have in common to say is that there is death there. There is violence, there is murder. And a lot of it is almost encouraged by different government forces. A lot of the issues that you were talking about with, the Constitution and our forefathers, it has played into what we're dealing with today. Thinking about the 13th Amendment and issues that are still happening because of little loopholes, or like you said, people aren't willing to give up privileges. It's very real. So my question, I know we talked about how while government plays into racism, religion often can too. Do you want to take a few minutes and talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I can. I'll talk about that. It has always amazed me that so many religions have embraced slavery at that time, but there were two religions that did not. So it tells me there were men and women who understood what Christ was all about. I mean, and those two were the Quakers and the Methodists. They knew from the beginning that slavery was wrong. And and that has always, and I think about, I was born Catholic, and I've always wondered why. was a pope. It was a pope, Pope Nicholas the Fifth. He gave his blessings to the Portuguese to begin the African slave trade. That thing has always bewildered me, but I understand, over the years I've come to understand that so many people who claim to be servants of Christ are not. And I even today, when I look at different religions, some of the most vehement racists can be people who claim to be lovers of Christ. I mean, even if you look at the Klan or even look at many white supremacists, they all claim to be Christians. And I always kind of chuckle too, because if people would actually just look at the Middle East, look at that place where Jesus was born, there is no way, when you see a picture of Jesus with blonde hair and blue eyes, there is no way that could be true. But yet that's the image that has been portrayed as Jesus as being this Northern European, when in reality, it's farthest from the truth. Because if it was so, that would be a constant theme in the Bible, is that this blonde, blue-eyed man walked the dirt roads of Palestine preaching.
That would be the miracle.
It would be. And but what you begin to learn is that, especially in religion, nothing is as it seems. Even the statues of Buddha was an Indian, and yet when you look at the statues of Buddha, they show them all as being Asian, being of Chinese or Japanese origin. It's not, like I say, the world as we know it is filled with falsehoods that we all, we need to be able to, and I think that is where we, as a people, that should be our main goal, is finding out what is the truth, what has really truly happened on this planet. Why do, I look at someone who's a racist, he sees people and sees behavior and he says, oh, that's just the way they are because they're Black, they're Italian, they're Jews, they're Mexicans. People are the way they are because of what they experience. We're all, when given a chance, same opportunity, same nurturing, we pretty much will accomplish the same things, positive things. This country has a history. They've created a narrative, an image of Black people. And anytime a Black person steps out of that image, they usually are destroyed, killed. Communities, there have been successful Black communities that have begun to really outshine many times the neighboring white community. And in every case, the white community has risen up and destroyed those Black communities. There was, we talk about, everyone thinks of Black people as being the rioters and destroyers. If you go back to after the Civil War and the first half of the 20th century, most of the riots that took place going back to starting in the early 1900s and all were actually by white people. They would go on rampages and destroy whole Black communities and kill them by the hundreds sometimes. But again, it's hard when you control everything. That's a history that stays hidden. And I want all the white listeners to understand that when I talk about these things, I am not accusing white individuals. I'm not accusing you because you had nothing to do with that. You were not there. But it's something that has happened. It's something that was done by people in white bodies, and it has been hidden away. Because again, the image has been that for some reason Blacks are bad, and whites are good. And so when anything bad happens to a Black person, he deserved it because he's bad. And and since we're on that subject, I have to tell you this. One of the things that has always bothered me to a lot of white people did not understand why so many Black people celebrated when O.J. Simpson was found not guilty. It was not because Black people really believed that he was not guilty. They were totally blown away that he actually beat the charges. That was something most Blacks had never seen a Black man accused of killing not just one white person, but two white person get off. Even if that Black person who was being prosecuted was innocent, it was almost a done deal that he was going to lose and go to prison or even go to, be killed. So when O.J. Simpson, when that verdict was given that he was innocent, that joy was more a joy of shock. And there was a sense of, it was not because we rejoiced that this man had gotten away with killing two white people. It was that the fact that here was a Black man and somehow he beat the charges, whether he was innocent or guilty. We didn't expect that. And I had my sister-in-law at that time. She was this blonde, blue-eyed lady. And she actually came over and just punched me like somehow I was responsible for this man being freed. Again, whenever things happen and people somehow, something that is not right, say it is perpetrated by, let's say, a Black person, that one Black person, then some people will see that one Black person who did something wrong and condemn the entire group. And so, and what to me, I look at O.J. Simpson trials showed was that the rich, whether Black or white, can nearly always beat cases that maybe in fact they're clearly guilty. If you have enough money, you can almost beat any charge. And that to me is what that verdict showed, that again, money is sort of like, this country is set up mainly, you might say, to, it's a country of the rich, by the rich, and for the rich. And that was not really truly the intentions of the founding fathers, I would say, but that has become the reality. And again, that has been done through also laws that have been passed where we have monetized our legal system. But the people who get the best shot at justice are the people with money. And again, that's something a lot of Black people really don't have. And that's also that has always been the policy of this country, to keep Blacks as poor as possible. And I'll stop right there.
No, that was awesome. That led right into my next question, which was, how do you think, well, I guess not how do you think, but we discussed this and we both agreed that often crime is associated with Black skin, or the darker your skin is, the more guilty you are, or the more horrible you're going to be. Your actions are going to be wrong. And you've told me a few experiences you've had with that, with microaggressions, and just how society looks at a Black person, especially a Black male.
Yeah, it's sad to say, but especially in America, we have been taught, and society. But let's I like I said, I believe in looking at history. How did the Black man become the symbol of criminality? And again, it was not something that just happened. Black males did not become a criminal element. It was something that was created. Again, as a whole, the history of this country, especially a history that shows why things are the way they are, a lot of times is hidden. So right after the Civil War, right after the Emancipation, and also right after Reconstruction, especially in the South, there were laws passed to criminalize pretty much Black behavior. I mean, simple things, and some of you may have heard this before, simple things. A Black person could be in a town, he could spit on the street, he could be arrested, thrown in prison, 10 years, life. Vagrancy, if he didn't have a job, didn't have a home, he could be thrown in prison. He could wind up being in prison 5, 10 years, life. Depends on, you know, what town he was, depends on how severe the law enforcement officers were at that in those particular places. And so for a simple act that was not criminal, you could be thrown in prison and pretty much thrown back into slavery. Because at this time, that was the whole purpose of criminalizing Blacks. They wanted to use Black labor again. But again, this was even worse than slavery, because now the Black person was not property, he was just something to use. So if, let's say, a police department or a town would hire out these Black prisoners to a company or even to a plantation owner, and this person worked that person to death, there's no big deal. If this person was, if they were treated poorly, given little food or what have you, still, it was no big deal. And this went on for decades. And it's one of those things that, and what happens when you take a human being and you abuse them that way, and they begin to think, even if I'm innocent, even if I don't do anything, I will get thrown in prison, I will be abused. So why not become criminal? Why not start stealing? Because again, there's no opportunity. Why don't I become a thief? People develop incredible anger. So murder becomes easy. When you've been brutalized yourself, it's easy to brutalize others because you begin to think this is just the way of the world. You know, when you think about this, and so this has been sort of like this history of abuse of Black males, and even Black females too, but mainly it was Black males that they wanted, their labor. And we'll talk about Black females, because that's too is a study in abuse. But and so after a while, a criminal culture was born in the Black community. Many Blacks begin to think, if I'm going to get ahead, doing illegal things was probably the best thing for me, because I'm going to be accused of crimes anyway. Even if I'm not a criminal, I will be treated like one. And so you can see how this kind of snowballed, and how this mentality develops, where you don't even have visions of doing great and wonderful things. And that's one of the things I've learned when I saw in this, being in a mainly white community, especially a community like Jackson. Kids grow up here, a lot of the kids grow up here, and the world is theirs. They grow up knowing they have the vision that they can do anything, be anything, go anywhere. They can do it. You can imagine the mindset of so many young Black kids growing up thinking, this is it for me, these ghettos, this plantation, you know, sharecropper, you know, this is as far as I'm going to be allowed to go. They might not see it, but that's all they see their parents doing, our Black adults doing, they're seeing them doing hard labor. There's no incentive to dream. There's no one to tell them that, no, you can do more. You can, there's a whole world out there for you to explore. It's not there. Again, it's gotten better. It is far better now in the Black world, in the Black community. But there are still too many Black kids who are trapped in places of darkness where they can't dream. They have no dreams. It's been beaten out of them. It has never been allowed to happen. Parents, have not been able to, they don't know how to inspire dreams in kids. And again, like I say, that's not true of all Blacks. I mean, I think about myself. I knew from an early age, first time I first grade, opened up a book, I saw a picture of Mount Whitney. I knew I was leaving Texas. I didn't know I was heading for the mountains. I didn't know I was going to wind up in Wyoming, but I did. As soon as I got a chance, I headed straight to California, to the mountains there. Decided they were too crowded. Did some roaming and went down to Colorado, Utah, and other places. Just wasn't right. Saw a picture of the Tetons, said, that's the place I need to go. And headed here. And pretty much that's where I've been. I've been here for the last 42 years. And again, it's one of my dreams that did come true. And it's one of the things that still inspire me. I wanted a place where I didn't feel like I had to go on vacation every 6 months, every year. I wanted a place that I could walk out my door and be on vacation. And that's Jackson. It's still a place that I love, and like I say, it has been really good for me. It has been good, and I have to be honest about everything. Did I have bad experience? Yeah, but nothing that affected me financially, nothing that has affected me career-wise, because every opportunity I've had in this valley has been given to me by a white person. And I cannot emphasize that the problem of racism is a spiritual problem. Like I said, I know white people who would die for me. I know Mexicans who would die for me. I know Asians who would die for me. I know people of all races who would die for me, but I also know people of all races who would kill me. It's a spiritual problem. And until that is addressed, not much is going to change. Laws can be passed and it will help. But until people really understand who we are, what we truly are, nothing changes. Nothing changes forever. And like I say, everything could be reversed. All of a sudden, Blacks controlled everything, had all the power, money. The abuse would continue unless there's a spiritual change.
Amen.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, personally, I was adopted into a white family, so I know that love goes above and beyond all differences that we might have. I live that every day, so I know that's true. So my next question is kind of more personal to where we are now. We've talked about the country as it is, and now I want to talk about Teton County, specifically Jackson. I think what really hit home with me is what you said about, if one Black person steps out of line, it kind of falls back on a whole group or a whole community. And I've caught myself here, with my friends that are Black being like, hey, you can't do that because if you step out of line this way, or we're at a bar and you hit this person, it's going to make everyone here who's Black look really bad. Because that's kind of what I've experienced in society. So that's what I've been used to. But it's not something we should necessarily encourage. and take further with us. So with your experiences in Jackson, what have been some of the negative?
Well, I have to be honest, this some is kind of comical, but when I first moved here, there was one other Black man here. His name was Wendell Brown. And I remember my second day here, I was actually out hitchhiking, and this young lady picked me up and to give me a ride, and I jumped in the car, and she goes, "You're not Wendell." And she thought I was Wendell Brown. But I've been here 42 years. And to this day, just 2 weeks ago, someone called me Wendell. And Wendell himself he's been gone for almost 25 years from Jackson. He does still come and visit. But from the second day I was here, people have been calling me Wendell Brown. And we used to joke about that. I used to say, I told Wendell, I said, God, Wendell, I'm so glad people like you in this town, because if they didn't, I would be in trouble. So anyway, I laugh because even at one point, there was a time when we said we need to take a picture and both of us take a picture, go to the newspaper and say, we want to take a picture, and have arrows pointing saying, this is William and this is Wendell. And it does happen. People still will call me Wendell. And even Wendell went to a point when I used to, I worked for the Park and Rec. So I started working with a lot of young people. I used to do the after school program, latchkey program. And he started getting, because Wendell, the people who would call me Wendell Brown were the older people who, but then all the kids would start calling Wendell William. They started calling William. They would see him. So, and it is a problem. I mean, I have been living in Jackson, being surrounded by pretty much mostly white people. I do confuse certain white people. I mean, I've even had some people get mad at me because there's this one guy, I called him Jonathan. His name was, but he looked like this guy I knew named Jonathan. Every time I would see him, I called him Jonathan. And finally, he just blew up. He said, I am not Jonathan. My name is Mike. I want to meet this Jonathan. But he resembled him. But finally, I said, okay, I'm going to really look at this guy's face. I'm going to look at Mike's face. And yeah, there is differences. But if you look at people superficially, you will make mistakes all the time. And that's what happens a lot of time. This black, this black mistaken identity, because a lot of times white people only see this color of the skin. And sometimes even black people, they look at you, you get surrounded by so many white people, you begin to see maybe just color of the skin sometimes. And it's easy to start calling people by the wrong name or to our mistaken identity. But talking about, again, about the whole Black experience, equating it with criminality. Perfect example, broad open daylight. Just come from my massage therapist. I walk around this corner. There are two white women sitting in the car. They see me. They immediately hit their locks simultaneously. So in their mind, they saw a Black man, broad open daylight. They thought criminal behavior, possible criminal assault. Did not really look hard to see who, because it may have been people I know, but this is an unconscious reaction. I see this all the time walking, people, I'll be standing out in the parking lot. People jump out of their car, especially white. And I have to say, a lot of Asians, not so much American, but Asians who are just on vacation. They see a Black face, boom, you'll see them immediately hit you'll hear them press, you'll see them press the button on their key to lock their doors. And they'll give you, they'll give you a sheepish look, or they'll just maybe try to ignore you. But they are reacting to my presence as a Black man. They create the possibility of theft of something out of their car to me, even though, you know, I may be standing there with my hands already full or what have you, but they see me as a criminal, potential criminal, or they see my image and they think criminality. And I've had people that I know do that. And this one lady, this happened again about 4 weeks ago. She was actually in the store. I suddenly appear, bam, she's in the store. She immediately remembered, she locked the car right there, standing right there next to me, looking at me, and to the point where she didn't speak to me. I think she realized what she had done was totally unconscious, and that why she did it, because she saw my black face. And so imagine you have this type of bias. You can understand why so many black men are shot down. Think about police officers who have this type of bias. They immediately assume a black person is the criminal, no matter what. We've seen that we've actually, even there's been cases like this on the news recently. This young man in a mall, there was a shooting. Black man, he decided he was going to try and help. There was a mass shooting taking place. He pulled his gun, went to help. The police saw him with the gun. They shot and killed him. He was a man, he thought he was going to help. Police saw him, black man with a gun, criminal, he's the perpetrator, shoot him. That happened. Every time I hear about, anytime I've ever heard about any undercover officer being shot, it has always been a black undercover officer. There is, this country equates criminality with blackness. And so Jackson, and I've even thought about that here in Jackson. I felt, even though I do know some of the policemen, in fact, 2 of the policemen are really my really good friends of mine. We, when I managed to round up here in Jackson, both of those men were at one point my assistant managers. I came to trust and depend on them. Each one of them, we had discussed going into business, and we're still friends to this day. I went to both their weddings. But the police chief, I mean, like I say, for the most part, the police officer in Jackson have been, from my experience, men of quality. I mean, yes, I mean, I've heard there's been some abuses. I've never been on the receiving end of abuse from a police officer in this town. They've always treated me with respect, and I've treated them with respect. But I know there is a problem. There is, the black male has been criminalized in this country. It's by the media, and also now, you know, even his own behavior, because so many black males have embraced criminal behavior. So again, my thing was, how do we reverse this? How do we let black men know that there's other opportunities out there? You don't have to resort to criminal behavior. Because again, some of it's based on experience. So many, you know, when you think about it, we have, in this country, we have something like 2.5 million prisoners, more prisoners than any other country in the world. About 1 million of those are black men. And the black male population is only about 6% of the population of this country. And to think that 1 million black men are in prison, and what's even sad about it is that most of them are in there because of drugs. I would say even marijuana. And here again, showing you how this country somehow always seemed to put black males in this difficult position, is that at a time when white people are now starting to make fortunes off of marijuana, because certain states have decriminalized or legalized the use of marijuana and its products, There's still hundreds of thousands of Black men and women who are in prison because of marijuana. And I look at that myself and I say that even though all states have not legalized it, but the majority of states have, every person who's in prison for marijuana should be on his way out. They should not be in these prisons because of doing things that now people are making millions of dollars selling legally. But again, my experience in Jackson, I have to say, as far as dealing with the law enforcement, myself, my own personal experience has been positive. And I think a lot of it has to do because I personally feel like I know the police officers. I felt like I was been friends with sheriff, chiefs, chiefs. One of my favorite police chiefs was Dave Cameron. And it broke my heart when he died of a heart attack, because he was a man that I felt like I could go to him if I had a problem about anything, and he would take me serious and give me an ear. And same way with Roger Millward. He was the sheriff here for a long time when I first moved here. We were both runners, and we seemed to have a lot in common. So often police officers and people of color, there's a distance between them. They don't know them. They see each other as strangers. If the main way to break down this barrier, that there has to be some type of outreach. I always thought about having meet and greet for police officers in the community, where if people can go and actually get to know these police officers can get to know you. And another thing too, I have to let you know that in this community, drinking and driving, alcoholism is a serious issue. One of the highest cause of death in this county, accidental death, is from vehicular accidents. Usually someone impaired by some substance, be it alcohol or drugs. And I've never heard this, but I know the police have a mandate to stop that. Because there have been high profile people who have died in car wrecks here. And so police officers, you can say that when it comes to drunk driving, they don't have a lot of patience with people who are driving intoxicated. That's something individuals must, they must address that within themselves. If they need help, they need to ask for help. But I can tell you that the police, they don't have patience with people who drive impaired, because there have been a number of deaths caused by such people.
I have to let everybody know the story that you told where you were walking and, the women were locking their doors. That's what we call a microaggression, where an action or something you say might not be openly racist, but it is still portrayed as racist. Like you said, the idea that even though you were minding your business, you were still a criminal. I think that's what most people around here would say that they face as far as racism here. I've had experiences of both. I think part of that is because I'm mixed, and I'm young. People are always more confident to talk to young people about how they feel of whatever they're doing or who they are. But microaggressions are very real here. They're very real. They're very strong. And it's a constant thing where, it might be someone locking their door. For me, I've experienced a lot of, when I go shopping, a store attendant will follow me around the entire store right behind me. Or if I'm walking past a group of white women, they all grab their purses and turn to the side so that I can't, reach in them. A workplace where they give me the crappiest job to do, and then you know, don't have any work for themselves. Different microaggressions can be shown in different ways, and it's still not okay. So I'm really glad you brought that up, because that's a big thing I like to touch up on. Is a lot of people say in this area we don't have racism, because they may not hear people out on the corner yelling slurs at each other, but it is still an issue in how you treat people, and also how people are seen in society, that it's okay to do that to other people. Go ahead, you look like you're going to say something.
Just, speaking about racism, when I first moved to Jackson, I made friends pretty easily. I had white families who pretty much adopted me as one of their sons or what have you. But I also had the opposite experience. I remember I had friends who lived out in Kelly, and I remember I would go over there on a regular basis. And this one day, they had a neighbor. He saw me go into their home, and he came over. And be honest, in my whole life, I've never heard such a racist tirade. I mean, he used, and I don't know if there's any kids listening to this, but he used the N-word. He just called me more niggers than I think I've ever heard in my whole life. And he was angry at the white family who had befriended me. He said that he could not believe that you allowed me into their home. He said he will never come back to their home again. He regretted all the nice things he had done for them. And when I see someone, and I wanted to go out, and I really wanted to go out and see this guy. I wanted to confront him, but my friends begged me not to go out. He told me, Steve said he would go out and he would deal with it, and he did. But still, it was amazing to encounter someone with that much hatred for you, and to have never seen him, never known him. I had no clue who he was. I'd never seen him before. Yet my mere presence set him off. He was willing to forsake people he claimed were his friends simply because I came into their home. It was a new experience for me, because I grew up in the South. I had never experienced anything like that down South. And it was here in Jackson. Same thing. I remember this was about 1980. I was invited to join the JCs, and I went to that meeting, and there was this one member. He came in, and he immediately goes, what that nigger's doing here? And all the others kind of looked at him. They tried to shush him out. He kept asking, what that nigger doing here? And I sat there. I'm one of those people. I've never been. Someone calling me a nigger has never really had a negative effect on me. Does not really bother me. There's other things that people could say that could be more upsetting. But when I see someone use that word so freely and so easily, I'm always grateful, because it gives me insight that let me know that this person is truly a potential enemy and someone I should be aware of and leery of. And finally, when they finally got him to shut up, but it was just, again, one of those things where people, they see a physical form. And so easily, I'm always grateful, because it gives me insight that let me know that this person is truly a potential enemy and someone I should be aware of and leery of. And finally, when they finally got him to shut up, but it was just, again, one of those things where people, they see a physical form, and they are immediately, if they've been taught a certain way, they immediately assume always the worst. I mean, this guy, he considered himself to be a cowboy, but he probably didn't know the history of cowboys in the West. At one time, 25% of all cowboys were actually Black. That's a story that's not told that often, especially after the war, when so many Southerners started moving out west. Most of the Black cowboys were driven off or killed. Again, it's not a story that paints a pretty picture about white America. Again, it's not that we're condemning all white people, but there's this segment of white people who are vicious and murderous. I mean, that is something. And we talked about this, and like I say, I've studied spiritual teachings from all over the world, and if you sit down and you look at what has happened on this planet, and like I said, nothing is as it seems. We are one of the religious teachings. They say that Black people, the reason why our skins are black, we bear the mark of Cain. That's why things have gone so badly for us. But if you look at history, you look and see who has been the killer of the brethren, who has been the murderer of the brethren, who has killed and destroyed more people, civilizations than any other race. It's been the white race. And there's another, and if you look at Deuteronomy, again, I'm not saying this to condemn, I'm saying this so people will think what is going on. I mean, because that's me, I'm always trying to figure out, okay, why is the world the way it is? You look at what has happened. If you go to Deuteronomy, whenever someone breaks the law of God and God curses them, the curse is he turns their skin white. That's something you'll never hear preachers, especially white preachers, talk about. But it's right there in Deuteronomy. He turns their skin white. And if you look at the wars, what was World War I about? It was mainly white people killing white people by the millions. You look at World War II, again, mainly white people killing white people until, the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor. If you look at history, American engine, annihilated by white people to a point. You look at, after the Mexican-American War, many Mexicans who lived in the southwest part of the United States were annihilated by white America. South America, whole civilization destroyed. Africa, at one point, the Belgian Congo, when the Belgians took over, they estimated that the lust for the wealth of the Congo was so great that over 15 million Africans were worked to death by the King of Belgium. So who bears the mark of Cain? Who embodies the spirit of Cain? It has been the white race. Again, not condemning one people, just stating a fact. You look at, I even thought about and people, make a big thing about Black on Black crime. Well, I just related to you, white people have killed more. I mean, every world war has been pretty much between two groups of white people. And even after World War II, the greatest threat to the world was a white nation, Russia, called the Soviet Union at the time. And why I've always said, if things change, let's just say right now China is rising. China is starting to show the same type of abuse. If all of a sudden China became the dominant power, nothing would change. The Chinese will abuse. I mean, you're already seeing in Africa how they're abusing the Africans. You see it in, again, you see if the Chinese Communist Party, I'm talking about the Chinese Communist Party, knows that it cannot exist, continue to exist if the rest of the world remains free, because this people really do want freedom. You see how the people of Hong Kong are willing to die to hold back the communist Chinese. They want no part of communist China because they know what would be in store for them. So again, nothing until we address this spiritual darkness that's in us, nothing will change. We'll just change one color for another, but the abuse will continue.
I love everything you had to say there. Whenever you speak, it makes me think, and that's my favorite part about talking to you. It's not just something that goes in one ear and out the other. You actually bring up topics that make people think about what world we're living in and how things affect all of us, and what we're actually doing here. So it's getting a little late. I have one last kind of topic I wanted to go over because I feel like it's really important and I feel like you understand it. And that is biracial issues. I've lived it all my life. Again, I grew up with a family that was all white, and living in an all white community, I was kind of literally the black sheep. And the different responses that my family got from people in the area was really interesting. A lot of it tied into religion, but a lot of it was very aggressive and very negative. And I'm so interested to see what it was like for, right over the mountain here in Jackson.
Well, I'll start with my son. My son pretty much the first part, his first experience here were pretty positive. Since he was, pretty much grew up here, he got here when he was 10. He was born in Iowa. His mom went to school, University of Iowa. And when we went there, we went back to Iowa for about 9 months for her to finish up school. And then we came back to Jackson. And he was born in Iowa, but he was about 10 months old when we got back. So he pretty much grew up here, and he had friends from the time, he was an infant until he was, he went to school here in Jackson, first until he was second grade. So during first and second grade, he really had no problems, racial problems that I know of. I think once he did come home and some older kids was asking him, "What are you?" And I told him to tell him that you're a child of God.
My family did the same thing. The exact same thing.
I told him, I said, just tell him that and then forget about the rest. But as he got older, his mom and I, we did divorce, and he went to school for a while in California, and then they moved to Colorado Springs. So from sixth grade, he did start having problems. When he went to sixth grade, he started having problems. He became a target. Kids there, especially a lot of older boys, started abusing him. And I remember his mom called me up and asked him if he could come back to Jackson, and if I would take him and he could go to school here. And and I did. He got back to Jackson. Things, he was able to make friends quite easily, and that's always been Philip's strong point. He makes friends very easily, and he did have some problems in school. But a lot of that, because he was, again, to a lot of the kids, he was new, even though some of the kids he had known when he was little, but now they're older. And there's a different dynamics than once kids grow up. But he did have some problems with some of the kids, and they saw him as a target. They would do things like, come on, hit him in the head, back of the head, and he wouldn't make a scene. And the teachers wouldn't do anything. He would never rat on anyone. He would just, teacher would ask him what's wrong, and he would never say, this guy hit me or this one. He would just take it. And so he was constantly getting in trouble. I mean, I would get almost like weekly, I would have to go up to the school and he'd be sitting in the principal's office. We had discussions, and the teachers we talked about how they could resolve it. And none of the teachers seemed like they were willing to resolve. They were not willing to deal with the entire issue. They saw Philip as the problem, and the way to deal with it was just throw him out of class. So I got tired of that, and I decided, okay, we're going to put him in a private school. I got tired of the attitude of the teachers at the middle school, and I put Philip in the private school. It was a Christian academy, and this is the two dichotomies. Philip, he told me to this day that was one of the best things I ever done for him, was put him in the Christian academy. And I did. The people there, they saw him as a whole person. They were willing to work with him to make him feel like he was special and important. And it did help. It helped him a lot. It helped him so that by the time he was ninth grade or what have you, he was not a problem. And he was a lot bigger and stronger too, so he didn't have to worry about people picking on him anymore.
I had a very similar experience in school. It's funny hearing you say, the exact thing that I lived through.
Yeah, and it was good. And then, to get to my daughter, and this is, religion sometimes is only as good as the people who practice that. And my daughter had the exact opposite. I thought, okay, Christian Academy was so good for my son. We're going to start her off in the Christian Academy. One of the teachers who were the original teachers, she was there for Aspen in elementary school, and she was truly God sent. But she only was there for that Aspen's kindergarten year, and it was great. And I often wondered if she had stayed there, things would have been so much better for Aspen, because she truly embodied Christ. Well, the next teacher, not so much. And that's when, with my daughter, Aspen definitely had to deal with racial issues. So many people, especially kids, a lot of kids there, they definitely saw race. And one of the things I remember Aspen was really hurt by, she wanted to be a princess. And all the girls, mostly, I'm being honest, most of the girls, they're all blonde, blue-eyed girls. They told her she could not be a princess because she was Black. And we had to address that and let her know that she could. But still, stuff like that has an impact. It has an impact on you. Doesn't matter how beautiful you are. If you're not blonde, blue eyes, you don't think you are as beautiful. And so we had to deal. We had to deal with that with Aspen. And also, her mom happened to be blonde and blue eyed. But still, we had to deal with Aspen because she reached the point where she started to want to emulate. She, again, like at that age, she was trying to find someone to identify with. I mean, at that time, there was a large Latino community, still is. She at times started trying to emulate Latinos. She decided at one point she was going to dye her hair blonde, and got blue contacts. And I kept, I understood what she was going through. Never got really angry at her, but I would tell her things like those blue contacts, Aspen, you're beautiful enough. Those blue contacts one day is going to roll back, going to fall and get caught in the back of your eye. and it happened, and I kind of cured her. It cured her of the blue eyes, but she still has a thing for blue eyes. So she finally got over the blonde hair. She embraced her own black hair or brown hair. I forgot what color it is. I don't know, because she used to have pink and red and what have you. But you know, I think now she's developed a better self-image of herself. And you know, I keep telling her, you know, she's beautiful, but also I want her to know that she is not a body. And, you know, because that is, again, I'm always looking for the true solution. The true solution is we have to realize that we are not these physical forms. You know, these physical forms, we animate these physical forms. We are the animator. These physical forms are just puppets. We are not our bodies. We are something far greater. And that is, you know, that's pretty much where, you know, my kids had some bumps, but, you know, nothing too drastic. And yeah, and I'm a very proactive parent. If I see my kids in trouble, I always react strongly to it. You know, like pulling Philip out of school, you know, going, I mean, there was a time in high school, Aspen she was being harassed by some young man, and I went to school and, you know, arranged to have a meeting with the young man, his parents, police, because I was at the point that this was going to be resolved. And, you know, the principal, they all were in on it, and it was resolved. It was resolved. And I was thinking, if you are, you know, when you know that you're right and you want to do the right thing, people will listen. I've noticed that most people are reasonable, and you can reason with people, some people, but I think I would even say the majority of people. There are a few people who are totally irrational, but there are those who are. And so, you know, my thing is, I do try to see all men as my brother. I see all men carrying that one light, which that is the light of God. And again, the solution, the true solution is a spiritual one. We do have to see ourselves, that see beyond these physical forms that we all carry around with us. And so, I don't know if you have any more questions.
No, I think that was the perfect ending statement, really. You have so much to say. I want to have you back again. I could do this with you every single week. Every time I see you, we actually have these conversations. And I do the same with Aspen too. We met for lunch a few weeks ago, and we were there for like 3 hours just talking about things we had experienced. Hey. And different thoughts and feelings about what we had gone through, you know, as women of color in these areas. So this couldn't have been any better for me.
All right. We did not touch on a lot of the women, but, you know, women issues I could, but we'll save that for next time.
Yeah, we're definitely going to have you back. And hopefully Aspen will talk with us too. So in closing, I'd like to thank everybody for coming and hanging out with us tonight. If you did have any questions, normally we ask questions at the end, but I kind of just felt like that was the perfect ending statement. So if you had any questions, please put them in our Facebook or email us. We'd love to address those. But again, William's definitely going to be back. So keep tuning in.
Hey, and I have to thank you. It's so good to see my daughter-in-law and my son. They're right. All right. Love you guys.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right.
Thanks, everybody.
Right. Thanks,
Have a good night. We're logging off.
Okay. Good night.